Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. We get a lot of questions from people asking, what tools do I need to make a quilt? And we make all the quilts in the store here with some very simple tools. So I'm going to take you down to the workshop and I'm going to show you exactly what you need to make a quilt. The first item you need is an iron. I use a Rowenta, and this is called a perfect steam, and it's really steamy. So this has the water reservoir down in the base here. This is a home model of an iron. It's not an industrial iron. It's kind of expensive, and you don't have to use this fancy of an iron. Any good iron will work. You just want to iron your fabrics really flat. So any iron will work. You might also want to use a spray bottle. When we have stubborn wrinkles, we will spray the fabric and then spread the water around a little bit and then iron it. So that's all you need.
For cutting tools, I use Olfa cutters, 60 millimeter. I like the large size. They have different sizes. I prefer this. You don't have to be very strong to use it either, so don't worry about that. I have weights that I use to hold down my ruler. And I'll talk about the ruler in a minute, but that weight is like a hand up here for me. And this is a little 5-pound weight, I believe, yeah, 5 pounds. It could be any weight you want. I happen to have an 8-pound, just if I'm gonna need that for any reason. No special reason, just somewhere in those ranges. The other thing you wanna be sure that you have all the time is a very sharp blade. And I probably use 2 blades a day, but I pretty much cut all day, but I think only using 2 is pretty good. But if it's not sharp, it is not fun. And it's much more difficult. So be sure your blades are sharp. They're expensive, so after you put them onto the cutter, which is a very simple process here. Right there. And I have a bad habit of after I cut, sometimes I set it down. I've never gotten cut by doing that. I could, but what happens, it might knock into something and dull the blade, and then they're really difficult to use. So the blades aren't cheap. If you take care of it by closing it down and just cutting fabric with it, it'll last you a long time. These are the tools that I use when I cut. The standard ruler that I use to cut with is the Olfa 624, 6 inches, 24 inches long. I can cut, they have little marks that you can line up on the lines on your mat. And that just takes a little practice to get used to, but you can cut any size piece that you want from 6 inches on down here. And I find it extremely handy to be used with the weights. I use Olfa mats. I have used many different mats through the years. I find Olfa is the best. I'm not getting paid to say that. That is what I use, and it's because I think it's the best. I'm not getting any payment or Olfa products to say that. The other thing that I use that's different is, I call this a yardstick, but it's not. It's a 4-foot stick. And you can get these at Home Depot, any type of home improvement store. And what I use those for is if I have a long piece of fabric up here and I want to make a cut, I can turn the mat this way. I can place this big stick on the board wherever I want to cut, use one of my weights, come back down to the edge or wherever the fabric is and make a nice cut with that. Very nice. So that's another tool that I think is essential to have for making cuts on longer pieces of fabric.
The next tool we need is a sewing machine. I'm using an industrial sewing machine. I do a lot of sewing and I like to go really, really fast. So I like the speed of an industrial machine. Of course, any home machine will work. Anything that will do a straight stitch will work great. But we have a lot of questions about this particular machine. This is a Juki. This is an 8700. It's a basic machine. It goes forward and backwards. It has a little guard here because it's very powerful, and this keeps you from running over your fingers. So it makes it hard for me to sew my hand. So if I want to go really fast, that's probably faster than I normally go. It's probably faster than you would go. But this, all it does, it goes forwards, backwards. There's no zigzag, there's no nothing, but it's a great workhorse. My machine has a bobbin winder, so when my bobbin is empty, I can just put it like that and it will fill itself up while I'm sewing and it'll automatically snap back. We've got, of course, stitch length. I can make a long stitch length if I want. This is a self-oiling machine, so underneath here there's a reservoir of oil and you can see it bubbling up here as you sew. So there's wicks all inside here. I never have to oil it. We've got a handy dandy measuring thing right on here, and you may have noticed the blue tape. So this is painter's tape. I use this a lot. I will either put it right along a line that goes straight from the needle straight down so that I can sew on diagonal of patchwork, or I will move it over so it's a 1/4 inch away to help me get a proper 1/4 inch seam. My machine has a big motor underneath it, so it's always on. It's completely silent, but if I press the foot pedal, it engages right away. So I make it go with the foot pedal down here, but it has a knee lift. So this thing I'm doing with my knee here, that lifts the presser foot. So I don't have to reach back here. I'm not even sure where it is back here to lift the presser foot. There it is. I never use that. I just use the knee lift and then I can just keep moving and it's hands-free. It's really, really fun. This is my old standby. This is my Consew 223. Again, an industrial machine. This is an older style. So I've had this since 1996. So this one's 22 years old. It will never wear out. I don't sew on it. I think these are meant for 12 hours a day for 30 or 40 years. So this has a motor on it also, but this motor makes a big noise when you turn it on. So it sounds a little bit like an airplane getting ready for takeoff, but it sews the same way. It's got the knee lift for the presser foot here. So it's just noisier because that motor is always on. Nice and fast. I'm still a little more used to this one, even with all its quirks. It's like driving a new car every time you get a new machine. But this one has served me well. You can see lines that I've drawn on it and places that are worn out, but the machine itself, again, self-oiler, so the oil is down here. There's probably a lot of lint too because I haven't cleaned it recently. So this is just full of oil down there. This is another machine that I use sometimes. This is a basic Singer home sewing machine, but it's got a zigzag. So if I need to do any sort of applique work, I'm going to switch to this machine. It's also quite a bit slower, so if you're doing something that's really fancy and intricate, you might want a slower machine, and I can even make it go really slow or a little bit faster. Now this has a lot of features, most of which I have never used, but if you can just sew forward and backwards, you can make most patchwork quilts. For thread, I normally use superior threads, so I have lots of thread here. So I like to use the Tex 30, and I use this for the long arm machine and for all my patchwork sewing. I also have some Maxi Lock thread here. My machines are not real picky. Some long arm machines are very picky and brand specific, so you have to be careful with what thread you use. Mine works well with any kind of thread, so I will just pick it according to color, but I use a lot of the superior. We have one more piece of equipment. It's not critical, but if you like quilting a lot, you can get a long arm machine. This is a great big long arm machine. We bought this used. This is a Gamble. Again, a great workhorse machine. It will last forever. And this is really fun. This just makes finishing your quilts so much fun. So I know a lot of you will probably hand off your finished top to a long armer and they will quilt it for you, but I absolutely love doing this. This just is so much fun. I don't do free motion quilting. I only used computerized edge to edge. So my machine has a Statler stitcher. That's the programs that it uses to do all the patterns. So I've got tons of patterns here, and you can pick one, you can scale it, you can repeat it, and this just finishes the quilts so nicely. The only other items I use are pins and scissors. So for scissors, we really love these Kai scissors. These are the 7250. They're about 9.5 inches. They stay sharp and they just work really well. And they're not real heavy, so your arm doesn't get tired using them. These thread snips I use at the sewing machine. These are Golden Eagle thread snips, and it's very quick to pick them up and just snip your patchwork. When you don't have to cut fabric and just have to cut threads, these are really, really handy. For pins, I've been using these kind of pins for many years. So they're about 1.25 inches with a ball on the end. I use these flat ones sometimes if I'm going to leave them in, that stays really, really flat. It's harder for me to pick them out, which is why I like the ones with the balls. It's easier for me to get those out. But I go back and forth. I like to use a pin cushion. I also sometimes use, this is a metallic dish here, so this way the pins tend to stick, and these are corsage pins. I use these on the long arm. It's easy to load a quilt with these long pins, and they have a great big teardrop shaped ball at the end to pull out. So I use those items. Of course, when I sew my patchwork, I'm going to bring it back over to my ironing board. This is a special ironing board that Matt made, and it's really nice because it's big. We have a video that shows you how to make it, but I do recommend a big flat ironing surface so that you can get your patchwork nice and flat. And again, we're going to use our metal yardstick here so we have something to straighten up against. Thanks for watching our video today, showing you all the tools that we use when we make our quilts. Now, there's a lot of other fun products that people use when they make their own quilts. So if you have a favorite item, leave a comment down below telling me what your favorite item is to use for quilting, because I would love to hear about them. If you have any other questions about the things we use, just ask. We'll be sure to answer. Happy quilting!